And thank you for Ashish for introducing me, and good morning everybody wherever you are. It's such an honor to participate in the ESCAP Statistics Week. And I like to start with a statistic. Global estimates suggest that on average 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced physical and/or sexual violence in their lifetime. And that's most often at the hands of an intimate partner. In the Asia-Pacific region, there are countries where this proportion is even 2 out of every 3 women. And having national level data about the prevalence of violence against women is the first step to understanding how to end it. And there's a growing demand for this data, since countries are required to measure progress towards ending all forms of violence against women and girls as part of their commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals. And because of the sensitivity and stigma around the topic and the safety risk for participants, special approaches and skill sets are required to measure violence against women. And these skill sets are still scarce. And to address this gap in technical capacities for violence against women data collection, the No Violence Against Women Data, or people say kNOwVAWdata initiative, was initiated in UNFPA in 2016. You see the logo on the top of my screen. And this is an initiative that's supported by Australia. And I'm the technical lead of the initiative in the UNFPA office. And Kristen in her talk after mine will talk more about the initiative itself. But I today will talk about the 6 golden principles and skills for interviewing women on sensitive topics, and in our case, it's around violence against women. And these principles are empathy and maturity, sensitization, confidentiality and safety, minimizing distress and providing information on support, reaching the unreachable, and taking care of the interviewer's own well-being. And I will illustrate these principles with some examples from violence against women surveys conducted in the region, mainly from Palau and Mongolia. But these principles have been applied to dozens of other surveys in the Asia-Pacific region. So let's start with the first principle, empathy and maturity. We know from many surveys that approximately half of the women who have experienced violence have never disclosed this to anyone before the interview. So interviewers should be selected for empathy and maturity, and they should be given training so that they can establish bonds with service respondents to get these secret sensitive stories. An example, in the Palau 2014 Family Health and Safety Study, and also in other studies, it was quite common for interviewers to get through the entire questionnaire with no report of violence, but at the very end, women would suddenly start talking about their experiences of abuse. So if a woman disclosed violence at this final stage, the interviewer was instructed to go back and to correct the answers previously given if they had consent from the respondent to do so. And as a side note, I mean, this is easy to do with paper questionnaires, but if you have CAPI systems, digital questionnaires, they should be designed to make this possible. Something on sensitization. Sensitizing interviewers includes giving them an understanding of gender-based violence, its dynamics, causes, impact on health and well-being. And with a deeper understanding of these issues, interviewers will also be able to confront and work with their own biases and prejudices. A judgmental interviewer, one who has attitudes of victim blaming, will not get honest disclosure. And I want to give the example of Mongolia, who in 2017 embarked on their first ever violence against women prevalence survey. And the National Statistics Office had to really relearn and apply new ways to collect data on this issue. And the interviewer training showed the survey team how to properly talk about gender-based violence in ways that were clear to women and that were sensitive. And if you want to learn more about the Mongolia study, Please attend tomorrow's session SA3 because there you will get a lot more about this survey. To sensitize interviewers, they go through many exercises and role plays. For example, in one exercise, interviewers need to imagine a painful or embarrassing experience from their own past. And they need to imagine that the person sitting next to her would inquire her about this experience. And without having to disclose the experience at any time in the training, interviewers will reflect and discuss on how this thought exercise changes their approach to interviewing. On confidentiality and safety, an example. Survey respondents are often afraid to speak out because they fear more violence if their spouse or boyfriend finds out that she has been participating in a survey. So it's absolutely essential that interviewers take utmost care to ensure that nobody in the household or community learns about the survey's real topic. So interviewers will thus use a safe name to frame the study in a way that doesn't reveal it's about violence. And that's not only in the community or in the household, but also when talking to their own friends and relatives. And this quote refers to a Palau interviewer, and the coordinator told us that co-workers of this interviewer were sort of interrogating that interviewer about the survey topic. So she made up stories like, it's about women's health and menstruation. And after that, people said, oh, okay, we don't want to hear about it. And role-playing was one of the biggest tools that helped us. On minimizing distress and providing support information. Enumerators or interviewers should develop skills to be aware of possible distress during the interview, and they should know how to respond if a woman withdraws into herself or gets upset. And some strategies include taking time to listen attentively and be quiet. She can make sympathetic comments such as, I know this is difficult, or she could simply offer tissues or offer a break. And in this quote from Vietnam, this is how an interviewer told us afterwards. When I encountered a case of abuse, sometimes I feel tense and end up stopping the interview to invite the woman to take some water, give her a tissue, and at the same time, take a sip of water myself to restore my own psychological balance. So interviewers need to be empathetic, supportive, but they cannot take on the roles of counselors, and that's important. But instead, at the end of the interview, they must provide all respondents with a list of locally available support services, and they should be trained to refer women who are in danger or who request assistance or otherwise. They need to be able to refer them to these services. In a violence against women survey, only one woman per household can be interviewed, and that's for safety and confidentiality reasons. And that one woman is randomly selected, and the selected woman cannot be replaced. And we teach interviewers to make every effort to locate this originally selected respondent and talk to her in private. And we have noticed many times that women who are reluctant to participate or who are hardest to find, they are most likely to be survivors of violence. So not doing everything to find them will result in a biased sample and in an underestimation of violence, and that can jeopardize the importance of the issue. So on the last point on well-being, interviewers are in the field because they care about the issue and they care about better data. And better data is collected by people who are emotionally well and who do know how to take care of themselves. So there should be opportunities for relaxation, debriefing and counseling, and also you should give them breaks, time off. And for example, in Palau, the interviewers were offered one-on-one, small group and full team debriefing sessions. And there was also a professional counselor available for the interviewers. But most interviewers actually in Palau found that just talking to each other was most beneficial. So doing surveys this way is complex and expensive, but evidence does show that survey interviewers who are not experienced but who take part in an intensive training, they get better response rates, better disclosure rates, and more respondent satisfaction compared to professional survey interviewers who have not been thoroughly trained on violence against women surveys and these golden principles from in this presentation. So the good news is that these principles are increasingly embedded in survey planning processes throughout Asia and the Pacific, thanks to the kNOwVAWdata initiative. And I really think that the best interviewers are those that can see interviewing as an exchange of gifts. Interviewers give their empathy, their compassion, their hearts to women who are desperate in need of a listening ear, and women then in exchange give their most secret and painful stories, and that's the data that we need to find out how often violence happens. So time and again we do hear that women feel valued and they find being listened to as something very beneficiary. Also, it's important to remember that even with the soundest violence against women surveys, they only reflect what are women willing to disclose to interviewers. And you can be sure that you don't get everything. You never get the worst cases, the women who have been murdered, the women who live in institutions, who fled their homes because of the violence, who are incapacitated, who are locked up, who are too afraid to open doors. So it should be fully understood that you never get the worst when you interpret your prevalence data. Because what we see in violence against women surveys is actually always an underestimation. So this is just a short taste. I hear music, but this is just a short taste of what I wanted to say about the topic. And our website has plenty of resources, including a fact sheet on these 6 golden principles, but also on methodologies, data visualizations, reports, and so on. Please do take a look. And also follow us on social media for the latest updates, including some useful products that we are developing to guide violence against women data efforts during COVID-19. Thank you very much.